Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for being here for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. Up on the coming up here, as soon as I turn the map advancer on, there we go. Sunrise, really good shot here today at over Eagle this morning. Way too early for me to ever look at this time of the year. But a real nice shot there by Gary. And moving on to fire danger, pretty high here up along the Yukon Flats area with the high fire danger, or extreme high fire danger extending down into and just west of the Fairbanks area, and some high fire danger also showing up over the Seward Peninsula and up here around the greater Noatak Valley area as well. And from there going on to the satellite imagery for yesterday, looks like a band of clouds here kind of sliding southwestward out of the Copper River Basin and the Northway area as well as the Yukon, and clouds here over the northern panhandle, lower clouds covering the coastal areas on down across Dixon Entrance to the Queen Charlottes, and a pretty good swath of clear skies, a lot of sunshine here from, looks like right around Unalaska and the north side of the Alaska Peninsula here, right up northeast Bristol Bay, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta into the interior areas. Very nice conditions. Most of the sunshine on the western Brooks Range and North Slope area, and a couple of bands there moving eastward along the eastern coast, and then another one just clipping the central coast, and otherwise some clearing. And then out in the Bering Sea, one mass of clouds right through here, upper level disturbance there coming in toward the St. Matthew Island area, and then a stronger front pushing in toward the far western Aleutians. And today that brought gale force winds in to the western Aleutians, that pushing eastward now in toward Adak and Atka. And this area clouds sliding eastward here, kicking off some moisture showers, especially over the Kilbrook-Auckland mountain areas this afternoon here as I continue to push in, but still have that area clearing, although narrower than yesterday, from roughly about Togiak Bay northeastward there across the Kuskokwim Valley, right up into the interior. A lot of sunshine today here over the Tanana Valley eastward. Thunderstorms breaking out there along these clouds. A couple of areas here, well, mostly over in the Yukon in Canada in this area of cloudiness, but also kicking off this afternoon over the eastern Tanana Valley, and then another batch up along the Arctic coast there, right in through here. That area of clouds having some lightning strikes, reaching just about all the way out to the coastline this afternoon on the eastern coast. Otherwise, looked like maybe a few more breaks in the clouds there over the panhandle today than what was seen yesterday, but pretty well clouded over from the northern southeast coast, Juneau, Skagway, across Yakutat into Prince William Sound, right up across the Kenai Peninsula, south central Alaska, of course, the Copper River Basin, and then back down to the southwest, Kodiak Island, pretty cloudy conditions, as well as, of course, I mentioned the Bering Sea out there. On the chart today, you can see that storm front pushing the gale force winds in, gusts 40 to possibly as high as 50 miles per hour with those sustained 35 knot winds advancing eastward to roughly the Adak area and pushing by the Shimia, so less wind, more showery out there in the rainfall. High pressure still holding over the eastern Bering Sea here, ridging northward, and that resulting in a lot of low clouds and fog, while the upper disturbance and the moisture coming eastward there. It's a little bit of light rain, drizzle, and fog there along the southwest coast, but were some showers developing this afternoon. Didn't get them on the chart here, right over the Auckland and Buckland Mountain areas, and maybe some scattered moisture up there over the Seward Peninsula areas, but another very nice day. Temperatures into the 70s and lower 80s, Tanana Valley westward on out toward Norton Sound, not quite making it to the Nolado Hills. But you see some very nice sunny conditions right up across the Brooks Range onto the north slope. Thunderstorms developing up in the eastern Brooks Range area, sliding off to the north, and then along the the Tanana Valley here into the eastern interior and along the Alaska Range, eastern Alaska Range. But we'll see action occurring over here in Canada. Otherwise, scattered showers, North Gulf Coast, very light wind conditions with high pressure over the Gulf of Alaska as well as the Bering Sea, and maybe some scattered showers with those clouds. Nothing too significant there for the Panhandle. And for tonight, thunderstorms, of course, will be diminishing later on gradually here this evening into and after midnight, along with the showers. We're still holding on to some showers, mostly along the mountains there, Copper River Basin, or along the Alaska Range, and to a lesser extent back to the west with otherwise partly to mostly cloudy skies over the southwest interior. It could be probably pretty fair here for the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, again back down into Togiak Bay. Just isolated showers occurring here in these areas left over from what developed this afternoon. There over the mountainous areas kind of shifting eastward, and high pressure, low clouds, fog, IFR all along the coast. There are some areas of drizzle right down to the north side of the Alaska Peninsula. Pribilof's in that zone as well. And on the north side of this high, a couple of troughs, big low there up west of Wrangell Island, and a couple of energetic troughs. One weak one, they're coming up the west side later tonight toward the Arctic coast. With this one, a little more wind with it, and probably a little bit heavier precipitation than drizzle, probably rain or showers, but there will be low clouds and fog along with it. Otherwise, high pressure holding here over the Gulf of Alaska, down along the southeast coast. So higher pressure, lower pressure inland. Onshore flow, that's going to keep cloudiness in, low type stuff, maybe some patchy fog along the coastal areas. Better, excuse me, better conditions as you head east. Kodiak, Kodiak, partly to mostly cloudy tonight. Same thing for the North Gulf Coast. And that front slowly pushing eastward, so gale warnings into the central Aleutians. We'll see tomorrow. That high pressure giving way a little bit there, sliding eastward, weakening a tad down to about 1,029 millibars. It's still a pretty good high center, and the front weakening, both having a weakening effect on each other, but I think the front's weakening more than the high pressure area is. And look for less wind and rainfall trying to reach the Nikolsky area, not quite making it. Could be a partly sunny day optimistically there for Alaska. Otherwise, look for considerable low clouds and fog all across the eastern Bering Sea here from the peninsula, and not so much over the Bristol Bay area. And then rain, of course, here with that pushing northward and eastward, showers following in behind. And still 25 to 35 knot winds in the forecast here from the Bering Strait up the west side of the Arctic coast there across the Chukchi Sea. Pretty good gradient up there, much lighter winds to the east. Maybe a few showers again tomorrow afternoon developing. May or may not be in the form of thunderstorms, but it possibly could be. And then thunderstorms here over the eastern interior. Looks like mostly the 40-mile country, south of Eagle, down again toward Northway, the eastern Alaska Range, and maybe the Wrangell Mountains. Otherwise, partly sunny for the Copper River Basin. Look for some isolated showers to develop with partly sunny skies for south central Alaska. And again, the showers developing over the mountainous terrain, and probably not much of that in Cook Inlet as well. And the southeast coast looking partly to mostly sunny. Again, the lower clouds hanging along the coast, burning off in the afternoon. Kodiak hopefully seeing some sun there as well in that dry area, but that moisture just off to the southeast. And still looking at the low clouds, fog, and drizzle there for the areas with the light winds here under that high pressure ridge. And then for the first day of the weekend, that system slowly moving northeastward and brings a chance of rain mostly to the central and north coast in the afternoon. So really not rolling along too fast, not all that strong either. Picking the winds up though, they're going small craft advisories there for the coastal areas of the Panhandle with that front as it arrives. Otherwise, the inland area is looking pretty good on Saturday. Maybe some scattered showers over toward the border. Otherwise, that's about it. Look for the rain to increase here, say from Port Alexander, probably not quite making Craig and Klawock, but definitely up to the north there over to Elfin Cove. Staying dry though for Juneau, all the inland areas staying dry. Rain probably reaching Yakutat late in the afternoon. and this trough here dropping southeastward into the Tanana Valley generates a pretty good area of convection and showers, some of which could be on the heavy side there, along with thunderstorm activity. Dropping right on in the afternoon, so pretty wet day coming up for the first day of the weekend there in the Tanana Valley, down to the Alaska Range. Not too much getting south of the mountains, though. It looks like just some scattered showers, mostly sunny, south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula, maybe the Prince William Sound areas, as well as to the west here, really nice under a ridge of high pressure right over the area, mostly sunny skies, light winds, mild temperatures, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. A few more clouds you get up toward up toward the Seward Peninsula, but sunshine over the western interior, all the way up across the Brooks Range to the eastern Arctic coast. And then this front bringing gale force winds with it as it approaches southwest, 35 knots there from probably Point Hope all the way up toward the central coast around the greater Barrow area. And then lighter winds, but that southwest component there probably will make for a VFR day with sunshine all the way out to the eastern Arctic coast, probably most of the day, especially in the afternoon. And then the rain spreads eastward there eventually. Out west on the western side of this sharp ridge of high pressure, good southerly flow now. That front, another front, stalled right out over Adak and Atka. In fact, the front right on top of Adak on Saturday. Rain eastward to Atka with gusty southerly winds, 25 to 30 knots or so. And another trough spreading rain separately up to the eastern Aleutians. Lighter type rain, lighter winds with this thing. And that'll probably reach Falls Pass on the western Alaska Peninsula. And that's about as far east as that'll get through Saturday afternoon. So Cold Bay on up to the northeast, looking pretty dry. Temperatures across the Panhandle starting out with 50s. A lot of clouds there, except 62 up there at Skagway. Juneau, 59 degrees. Sitka, 57. 57 also down at Klawock in the Craig area. 59 Yakutat. Lower to mid-50s. Prince William Sound, the North Gulf Coast. Portage, just 51 degrees. 54 in Cordova. Lower 60s for the Copper River Basin with McCarthy at 62. And then north of the mountains into the 70s. 72 at Northway. 73 Delta. Mid-70s here, central Tanana Valley on out from Fairbanks to Tanana, and even warmer up over the Yukon Flats. In fact, Eagle was up to 81 degrees, so they topped that 78 by 3 degrees, and that was, I believe, the warm spot in the state today. Otherwise, 76 up at Fort Yukon, and a 73-degree reading over at Bettles. Back down into the mid-60s here as you head west, and that falls into the lower 50s there across Kotzebue Sound, and then down to the 40s out toward the coastline. But 71 over at Arctic Village today, and 67 in Anatuvik with 50s away from the coastline there, away from the chillier waters over the North Slope. Upper 40s for the Bering Strait, and then the Kuskokwim Valley starting in the 70s here at McGrath to 70 degrees. Sleepmute down to 62 for Bethel, even chillier across the Yukon Delta. 46 at Macoriac, 44 at Savunga. Mid to upper 40s for the Pribilofs, lower 40s at Shimia. Mid to upper there for the Adak-Atka area, and 47 on Alaska, and 40s on the north side of the peninsula here to mid 50s south side. And for the lows tonight, mid 50s from the upper Yukon Valley there right into the Tanana Valley and southwestward, cooling off to around 50 on down toward the Delta. 40s Yukon Delta, Bering Sea, Alaska Peninsula. Upper 30s along the Arctic coast, otherwise in the 40s near 50 for the North Slope, and upper 40s for the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow up a little warmer for the southeast coast there, 60s, 65, maybe towards 70 in some areas. Very nice again here over the eastern interior, 75 to 80 degrees north of the mountains. Even the Copper River Basin now coming up into the lower 70s. The Susitna Valley, at least the mid 60s there. And then cooler on down toward the south. Kodiak is 56, 50s for the Alaska Peninsula, near 50 for the Aleutians and the Bering Sea. And for flying weather, marginal VFR, all of the Gulf of Alaska into the northern Panhandle, northward there across Prince William Sound to the Wrangell Mountains. Also areas of south central Alaska, south of the Alaska Range here to Kodiak, VFR. And then, of course, lots of marginal VFR for the Bering Sea with a band of IFR from the Strait. Wrapping up and coming close to the eastern Arctic coast. IFR with the next front pushes a little to the east in the afternoon. to mostly the Atka area, and then that low cloud fog condition keeping the IFR mostly off the coast though, and along and south of St. Lawrence Island, and another batch here starting to build out over the southern Gulf of Alaska. But marginal VFR retreating back to Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, becoming VFR for the northern panhandle. Passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, both good VFR tomorrow, wide open. Lake Clark, rainy, Merrill, VFR, and windy as well. Isabella, Mentasta, VFR, risk of a thunderstorm for Mentasta, and Tanita, VFR, with Portage, though, marginal VFR the entire day, and Chilkoot and White starting out marginal, improving to VFR, hopefully by noontime, maybe sooner, hopefully not later. And for the freezing levels, we've got 6,000 feet here just east of Kodiak, and a kind of a cool wedge in across the panhandle with the much milder, hotter conditions on down to the south. 8,000 feet up over the eastern interior, then back down to 6,000 over the Bering Sea. So really not much of a gradient, a little bit more there over the western and central Aleutians. And icing-wise, just some scattered areas of light to very isolated, moderate, mixed type icing here, eastern interior, above about 8,000 feet, 6,000 feet out here along the Kuskokwim Mountains. Maybe a couple areas up to the north, really not too significant there. And then with that main front here, this whole area kind of weakening as it pushes eastward, wrapping back in toward the western Aleutians. And the jet stream trough coming in across the Chukchi Sea, southwest 50, supporting those increasing surface winds there from the Bering Strait northeastward there across the western Arctic coast the next couple of days. Upper level high along the border there, eastern border, main jet to the south. 9,000 feet, very light wind conditions under a ridge from Bristol Bay, the Alaska Peninsula, across southern Alaska, just 5 knots, turning southwest, getting quite windy up here to the north and northwest. You can see 25 to as high as 40 to 45 knots cutting across the Brooks Range, and southeast at about 5 for the Panhandle. Out in the Bering Sea, strongest winds, 35 knots ahead of that front tomorrow at 3,000 or at 9,000 feet. Fall back to about 25 at 9,000 feet. Still some pretty good southwesterlies here, 30 to 40 knots, western coast down to the Bering Strait. Light winds, southern Alaska, light winds, southeast coast. These stronger winds with this system staying south of the Gulf or just south of the Gulf of Alaska and well off the Panhandle. And for turbulence, of course, below about 4,000 feet, light to isolated moderate chop there from the Bering Strait northeastward to the central Arctic coastal areas, just possibly as far east as Aliktok. And for the Aleutians, maybe, possibly, for small aircraft below about 5,000 feet for from Unalaska on out toward Atka. And after the break, I'll return with a look at the marine forecast and ice edge.
Saturn, the ringed planet.
Welcome to Stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dehne Regis, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory, and we're here to help you find your way around the sky tonight.
Dehne and I are really excited because last week one of our favorite planets was at opposition, and as a result it's now in a great spot in the sky and we can view it all night long.
And that planet is the ever popular and lovely ringed planet Saturn.
Let's show you.
Okay, let's first explain a little bit about what opposition means. If we could view our solar system from high above the North Pole of our sun, as we look down, we can see Earth's orbit and Saturn's orbit around the sun. Earth is about 93 million miles from the sun, and it takes 365.25 days for Earth to make one trip around the sun. In layman's terms, we refer to that as a year.
Saturn is the 6th planet from the sun and is almost 900 million miles away. It moves much slower in its orbit, and it takes almost 30 Earth years to make one trip around the sun. Therefore, Earth makes 30 trips around the sun for every one trip of Saturn. So it's quite obvious that Earth and Saturn are constantly changing their position in space with respect to one another.
When Saturn is at its greatest distance from the Earth, it is on the other side of the sun as seen from Earth. And that is called superior conjunction, which happened last year on December 10th. On that day, Saturn was a whopping 1 billion miles away from us. But 6 months later, on Thursday, June 15th, Earth and Saturn were lined up with the Sun. Saturn is now on the same side of the Sun as the Earth and is a lot closer.
Or if you think of it from our perspective, the Earth is in the middle and Saturn will be on the opposite side of the sky with respect to the Sun. This orientation of the Sun, the Earth, and a planet is called opposition. And whenever a planet is at opposition, it is always at its closest and brightest. So this week, Saturn will be just over 818 million miles away, which is almost 200 million miles closer than it was on December 10th, 2016. And although Saturn is always close to Earth and very bright every opposition, this opposition is going to look great because of the way the rings are tilted toward us.
You see, even though Saturn's rings are always tilted at the same angle with respect to its orbit, its rings seem to tilt back and forth as seen from Earth because Earth constantly changes its position in relation to Saturn during Saturn's 30-year orbit. For instance, back in January 2003, Saturn was in such a position that its rings were tilted up to the maximum, with the southern side of the rings wide open, which means that more sunlight reflected off the rings and made the planet much brighter than usual, and the rings looked their most dramatic.
Then, as year after year went by, we gradually saw less and less of the southern face of Saturn's rings. They slowly closed, so to speak, and by January 2009, we actually faced Saturn's rings edge on, and for a few nights, they seemed to disappear. However, as the years have passed, we're now positioned so that we can see the northern hemisphere and northern side of Saturn's rings, making Saturn appear brighter in the sky. So check out Saturn this week, and if you look at it through even the smallest telescope, trust me, you'll be blown away. To find Saturn, simply look southeast shortly after sunset. It will be in the constellation Ophiuchus, just to the left of the stars of Scorpius the Scorpion.
And while you're looking at Saturn, ponder this little bit of trivia. Of all the planets in the solar system, Saturn has the least density. This means that for as big as Saturn is, it's not as heavy as you might think. Its density is so low that you could actually float Saturn in a bathtub full of water, if you had a bathtub big enough.
Saturn in a bathtub. I wonder if Saturn would leave a ring.
On that note, happy Saturn watching and keep looking up.
Welcome back. Sea ice analysis here. Shorefast continuing to decay and break off and shift out to the west a little bit like that piece did there. And down to the south here, Kotzebue Sound in this area, probably what's left there will be gone possibly by Monday. And for coastal water forecast, high pressure right off the coast, so west-northwest winds really light, 10 knots. Kind of variable over the inside waters, but northerly 20 knots there for northern Lynn Canal, becoming maybe switching around in the afternoon. Otherwise 15 knots or less with slight seas. Next day on Saturday though, winds come up 25 knots, except for the south coast, just 20 knots, but we're looking at small craft advisories for a good stretch of the coastline, turning east 25 in the north coast. Clarence Strait increasing southeast 20. Otherwise, pretty light, Frederick Sound, Stevens Passage, Lynn Canal southeast at 20. For Prince William Sound tomorrow, variable to northwest at about 10, light southwest breeze up Cook Inlet, otherwise variable winds, 10 knots or less, Kachemak Bay down across Shelikof Strait, northwest 20 there on the east side of Kodiak Island, northerlies 15 for the North Gulf Coast, turning northeast, a little stronger to 20 knots on the east side. And then for Saturday, same thing here, we've got the variable winds there for Kachemak Bay and Shelikof Strait, light southwesterlies there for Cook Inlet, and northerlies for the North Gulf Coast and the Barrens. And then for Friday, we've got south winds for Bristol Bay at 10 knots. That's about it. Otherwise variable, 10 for the peninsula, northeast 20 as you approach Sitkinak. Then for Saturday, those turn around to the west. On the light side, though, at 15 knots. Otherwise, 20-knot winds for the Alaska Peninsula southwest on the Pacific side, southeast on the Bering Sea side, southwest 15 for Bristol Bay at seas just 2 feet. And for the Fox Islands, that's when winds will be lightest tomorrow, south to southwest, 15 to 20 knots, and then increasing markedly there from Nikolsky west, 30 knots southeast winds there ahead of that front, dropping back to 20 knots west of the front on out towards Shimya. Then on Saturday, northwest 20 from about Amchitka to Shimya, and then south 30, southeast 25 to 30 knots there from Adak and Atka, eastward all the way to the Fox Islands with 8 to 10 foot seas. Southwest coast, 15-knot winds there, varying directions, southeast 20 for the Pribilof. Small craft advisory, St. Matthew and St. Lawrence Islands, southerlies 25 knots. Saturday, southeast 20 all along the southwest coast. Small craft advisories here, northern Bering Sea down across the Pribilofs, 25 knots, 9 foot seas. Arctic coast, big wind increase here on the west side. Southwest, turning south 30 knots, and gales here on the western coast tomorrow. Small craft advisories central coast, falling back to 15 to 20 on the east side. And then on Saturday, we've got gales here, probably from, if not Point Hope or Cape Thompson, to northeastward to the central coast, 35 knots southwest, seas up to 13 feet, 15 to 20 knotters on the east side, and then 30-knot winds right on down to the Bering Strait. And looking at tonight's forecast again, diminishing thunderstorms and showers, staying pretty cloudy here. Southern Alaska, fair in the north under high pressure, low clouds fog the Bering Sea. There's that gale force front pushing slowly eastward, fair over the Panhandle, and mostly sunny tomorrow. Thunderstorms eastern interior again, and front weakening as it pushes toward the eastern Aleutians. High pressure along the coast, scattered showers developing over the mountains in the afternoon. Better conditions, a trough in the Tanana Valley.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.